What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network, on Peacock, and on Vice TV. As today we're talking Season 1, Episode 10, the season finale of Tales from the Territories Mid-South, Bullets, Blades, and Bar Fights. For this one, we got Jim Ross, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Michael Hayes, and Jake Roberts. They closed out the season on a high note with this episode. I've largely enjoyed a lot of the episodes so far. There really hasn't been one that I haven't liked, especially since, as I've mentioned before, I'm not really privy to a lot of the stories they told here on the show before. I know a lot of them are public, and some of the JR stories on this episode I remember from his, I think, first book, from when his, talking about his Mid-South days and Leroy McGurk and a lot of those sort of stories. But still, I thought it was a very good episode. Everyone had a lot of stuff to share, and I've just really liked the show overall, and I thought they went out on a high note here with this episode, and I hope there's a second season. So anyway, they talk about how Mid-South was run by Bill Watts, and it was largely known for its blood and the wrestlers constantly sticking to kayfabe. Jim Ross says that no one really had a contract, and Hayes said it was mafia-like back in the day. You can never be seen in public with the person you were in a program with. If you were facing a heel, obviously if you were a babyface or a heel, and they've talked about this, a lot of the stuff they mention on this episode, I'm surprised this didn't open this season, but a lot of the stuff they mention here, like never being in public, never being spotted in public with a person you're in a program with and stuff like that, sticking to kayfabe, a lot of those aren't really exclusive to Mid-South. They were a recurring theme throughout the season, so I'm surprised this didn't open the season, but it did make for a great season closing episode as well. They talk about how they really wanted to make the fans believe that what they were seeing was real. DiBiase brings up how I believe Mid-South was the first promotion to make a black man their top babyface, that being Junkyard Dog. They talk about Bob Geigel and how he couldn't believe it and how he wasn't a fan of it, and JR brings up that back then there was a lot of old white men running the promotions that really couldn't understand what the appeal of having someone like JYD in a position like that was worth and didn't really understand it and stuff like that. But JYD was great. He had charisma. Hayes talks about how the Freebirds beat JYD in Buck Robley, in a tag team match where the losers had to have cream put on their head that would cause hair loss. And the whole idea was that Hayes, before he could put it on Robley, JYD accidentally got hit with it in the eyes. And that was the whole story, like, did he do it on purpose? Was it an accident? Either way, JYD sold it in real life as if it actually happened. They aired a segment where he had his eyes, taped up shut, and he pretended to be blind during his wife's birth of their kid, of their son, daughter, whatever. He held the wrong baby, or he touched the wrong baby by accident, and his wife was like, no, our kid's over here. Like, he went to great lengths to protect the fact that he was not actually blind from getting this cream in his eyes. They had a rematch, and the Freebirds actually had to get a police escort to the match because they had so much heat. People wanted to fucking kill him, to the point where the security found a guy in the bathroom with a gun in his hand that had a Freebird engraved bullet in it. It was one bullet in the gun, and it said Freebird engraved on the bullet, which is wild. They actually had a dog collar tag team cage match, so JYD in storyline could sense where Hayes was, which is great. That's such a great storyline. I guess Watts, who, obviously I talked before about how Bill Watts ran the promotion, he wanted all of his wrestlers to keep kayfabe outside of the ring. Jake Roberts recalls being in Jacksonville, Mississippi, with Jim Duggan, and they were drinking, and Duggan was drunk. He gets beat up by, like, this 6 foot or 7 foot tall guy, like this fucking massive guy, 6'7" guy, whatever. And he was down and out. Roberts was worried that if Duggan was down and out, then Roberts had to step up and start fighting this guy. Thankfully, Duggan got back into it. He got his finger bitten very hard on the thumb by this 6'7" guy, or however tall he was. And that actually allowed Duggan to sense where the guy was, because he was so drunk he couldn't throw punches because he didn't know where the guy was. But because he got his thumb bitten, and it was pretty harsh, he knew where the guy was because he was biting on his finger. So he actually knocked the guy right the fuck out, and he was screaming at him, you owe me shots, whatever. They were the two that got kicked out, Duggan and Roberts, and Duggan was banging his fist on the door, trying to get back in. He wanted the shots that he was owed. And the police start coming, and Roberts is like, we should probably get out of here. They talk about a guy named Jerry Brown and how he wanted more money. I think him and Buddy. He felt like he and Buddy deserved more money from Watts. Watts said no. And not only did he say no, he fired the guy. And Brown was a fucking psycho. He actually waited outside of Watts' house where he lived with his family. And the police had to come and tell him, you can't be here. You got to get the fuck out of here. And he went so far as to send a clock to Watts' house making him think it was a bomb. And it went so far that shots were fired at Watts' house, presumably by Brown, just at random, and nearly hit his daughter. And Watts was like, enough is enough. He got his fucking shotgun. And this is how the story goes. They can't say this for a fact. This is exactly how it went down, but this is how JR heard the story told, that Watts found Brown, put the shotgun in his mouth. I don't think killed him, obviously, but threatened to shoot him right in the fucking head if he didn't knock it off, which is pretty crazy. Speaking of JR, he does say that the hot, bad blood issues in wrestling sold a lot more box office and were bigger box office draws than championship matches. DiBiase told Ernie Ladd, who was running the promotion at that point, that he wanted to turn heel, and that no one would see it coming because he was the ultimate babyface. He had been a babyface in that promotion the entire time up to that point, so Ladd thought it was a great idea. DiBiase recalls turning on JYD to win the championship, gets a ton of fucking heat. They had a loser leaves town match that everyone expected DiBiase to lose because the babyface would usually beat the heel, but JYD lost. So he would come back every week to the typical wrestling trope, which back then was something fresh, especially in the territories when you didn't see it everywhere else. He came back with a mask on. So he would come back and make life miserable for DiBiase, again, a great angle. Before it became Mid-South, it was previously known as NWA Tri-State, and it was run by Leroy McGurk. So JR talks about how he learned a lot from McGurk. He was basically his assistant, advisor, whatever. McGurk was blind in one eye by 51. DiBiase, meanwhile, was dating McGurk's daughter, Mike. Mike was the name of the girl. That was Leroy's daughter, Mike. That was her name. So I guess they were driving one time, Leroy McGurk, that is, and JR. And Leroy asked JR, do you know anything about DiBiase, dating my daughter? And JR doesn't really like to get involved with that sort of stuff. He knew about it, but he played it safe and was like, yeah, I don't really, talk to the boys. I don't really fraternize with them. I really have no idea. Meanwhile, Leroy has a fucking gun in his hand in this car, and he's like, well, I'm going to kill him. And then JR is like, well, I don't want to be an accomplice to murder. So, and then Leroy, he was drunk when he was going over all of this, but he was so drunk, but he had a methodical plan for what he would do to kill DiBiase. And he said, the next time I see him, I'm going to kill him. And he told JR that he's going to sit down in a hotel room, call DiBiase up to his room, and when he shows up, he's just going to start firing shots. And again, he can't see shit because he's blind in one eye, if not both eyes by that point. He was pretty bad. He was pretty bad off by that point. He was just going to start shooting and hopefully hit DiBiase. And JR is like, this is pretty bad. So he calls up Watts about it. Watts says, I'll get it taken care of. And he ended up taking McGurk off of JR's hands. And it wasn't long after that DiBiase stopped dating the daughter. So thankfully that did not go on for much longer than it did. Roberts recalls one of the greatest moments of his life career, meeting Muhammad Ali. So Roberts worked with a guy named the Snowman in Mid-South. That was his wrestling name, the Snowman. And I guess he lived up to his nickname, they said, because he did a lot of fucking drugs. And the Snowman had Ali in his corner. Roberts, I presume, was the heel. Had a guy named John Nord in his corner, and he was only 5 weeks in his career at that point, was John Nord. So I guess they do the whole thing. I forget exactly why Watts was pissed at Roberts. I missed that part. I think Ali was he threw punches at Roberts, didn't actually hit him, but did the fake punches, and Roberts was I guess staggering or whatever, every punch, every shot. So he wasn't exactly, I guess Watts was pissed that he didn't sell for him, or didn't sell well enough for him, or didn't actually get hit, whatever. So Watts was pissed. Roberts wanted to meet Ali, but because they kept the baby faces away from the heels, just in case, backstage and in public, whatever, never had that chance prior to this point. When Roberts was backstage after getting chewed out by Watts, Ali comes up to Roberts and says, you're a smart man, you did the right thing out there. And that meant the entire world to Jake Roberts. And everyone at the round table here talks about how Ali understood wrestling and he could throw a working punch better than anyone. To close it out here, kind of, not the last story, but one of the final few stories. Hayes tells the story about how Buddy of the Freebirds was put with Hayes and Terry when they first arrived in Mid-South. Now, Hayes and Terry were younger. Buddy was a little bit older, so he said the dynamic worked perfectly. They constantly, when they were driving, had to take pisses because they were always drinking so much beer that every 60 miles they always had to stop to fucking take a piss. So there came a point where Buddy, I guess, was always trying to piss off Terry and pee on Terry when they would get out on the side of the road and pee. He was trying to pee on Terry. So he eventually got what he wanted. In that one time, Buddy gave Terry a drink when Terry was driving to throw out, but it was a full bottle, except it wasn't beer. It was piss that Buddy had peed in. It was a bottle of his own piss. Terry drank it accidentally, and he was fucking pissed, obviously, no pun intended. So Buddy flies to the next show while Hayes and Terry drive, and they have Buddy's bag. And they feel like, or at least Terry does, this is the perfect opportunity to get my revenge. He put poop in there, he pissed in there, he put rotten eggs in there. They were driving, they found a dead possum on the side of the road. They picked it up with sticks, put it in his bag. It was a lot of awful, gross shit in there. People were throwing up, they said, when they walked by them with this thing, which I think that sounds like an exaggeration, but it was pretty gross shit. And they gave Buddy his bag. Everyone knew what was about to happen, so they gathered around, watched Buddy open up his bag, and he completely no-sold the whole thing. He brushed off his gear, put on his gear, and went out and had like a 3-minute match after that with Bill Watts, actually, with Cowboy Bill Watts. So, yeah, that was pretty gross. To close it out here, they talk about how the promoters of all these different territories did not like Vince trying to kill said territory, so they all met up for a meeting about how they can stop it. JR was in the bathroom. 2 of the guys, he didn't name names here if he even knew who it was to begin with, were in the bathroom when he was in one of the stalls, and they said, you know what, we should just kill Vince. And I could do it for like $700. And JR's like, fuck, I'm not going to listen. And again, he had been an accomplice, I guess. He had been involved in a lot of these murder stories, which is pretty crazy. Poor JR. And he was like freaked the fuck out. Thankfully, they left the meeting anyway. Whoever had said that might have either not been serious or wasn't successful because Vince is still here today. But JR said that Bill Watts ended up leaving anyway because he thought it was a bad meeting. They couldn't work together, and these people couldn't even decide what they wanted for breakfast, let alone work together to run a joint promotion. So that didn't exactly work out, so they left. But Mid-South soon after was changed to the UWF, I think Universal Wrestling Federation, to not sound as regional. The ratings were great, but nobody attended the shows due to like the oil industry being down and whatever. No one had enough money to go to the shows, so the promotion ended up folding. And he also mentioned, Ross did, that the Crockett's actually screwed up the UWF invasion, and that was the end of that. As far as the legacy of Mid-South, JR says it was a great learning territory. And that was it for this episode, for the season finale of Tales from the Territories, for Season 1. Mid-South, bullets, blades, and bar fights. Another good episode, again, if you've probably heard these stories before, if not once, probably multiple times. But yeah, I thought it was good stuff. I enjoyed it. They got a great roundtable here of JR, Ted DiBiase, Michael Hayes, Jake Roberts. All of them had great stories to share. And JR was kind of like the anchor of the episode and really carrying it down, having the most amount of stories to share, and Hayes as well. So good stuff here. Check it out when you get a chance. And check out all the other episodes of Tales from the Territories when you get a chance. It's been a very good, solid series, especially if you're not well-versed in the territory stuff, as I am. To say that I'm not well-versed, not to say that I am. But, if you're not familiar with a lot of these stories, you'll probably like it as much as I did. You're constantly learning something new with these episodes, and it was a lot of fun for the 10 weeks, for the 10 weeks that it lasted for, so definitely check it out when you get a chance. And next week on Vice, they're actually airing a Vince McMahon documentary called The 9 Lives of Vince McMahon. So, I know that was rumored for a couple of months ago, and they pulled it, probably because they realized it was dumb to do it in the midst of, like, the Tales from the Territories run, and to rather just air it after it was over. So that's exactly what they're doing, and they're airing it this coming Tuesday. So check it out. I'll definitely be watching it, and I'll probably have a review of said special here on the channel at some point early, later on next week or within the next 7 days or whatever. So keep an eye out for that. Have an awesome one, guys. And again, if you haven't already, check out all my other reviews, not just the episodes themselves, but my reviews of these Tales from the Territories episodes here on the channel in the description box down below. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content, and hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.